What is up, guys? It's Ankith here. Welcome to the channel, and today we are doing something really interesting that I actually wanted to do for a long time. We are comparing rank 3 Void to Mr. Fantastic, and we're gonna see if Mr. Fantastic is actually underrated or is he, that bad. Right off the bat, I want to tell you that my Void is sick to 100, as you can see, and Mr. Fantastic unfortunately is not. He doesn't need the awakening, but I think that it actually speeds up the fight, so I must say that Void has kind of an unfair advantage towards him. So we're gonna put them both in 10 different setups and situations where we're gonna test their damage. We're gonna test who is the better buff control, or sorry, the better buffet champion, Masochism champion, who controls power gain better, who does in distract, for instance. And there are a whole lot of other things that we're gonna see, and we're gonna put them in endgame content, or at least Act 6, Act 7 type content. And that's the main thing. When I was testing these two, I was kind of surprised. I wasn't wildly surprised actually, but it was interesting to see. Alright, so without further ado, we're gonna get into some damage comparison. And yes, I did say Act 6, Act 7, endgame. This isn't really endgame, but I do think that Realm of Legends is a really decent place to test out the max damage potential. It's not the best place because it doesn't tell you the realistic damage. However, up front, as you can see, we're doing a standalone comparison where both of them are without any synergies. I did bring Magneto just so the first fight is quicker, but he doesn't have any synergy with any of them, so that doesn't matter. Another thing, if you really don't care about the damage, you can just skip a couple of minutes ahead, and we're going to be comparing utility over there. But I don't know if this was a surprise to you, or if this is a surprise to you, but Mr. Fantastic has really good damage. He is actually insane, especially after the buff. His numbers have been tuned up so well that in any situation where he can get at least 6 to 10 buffs up, debuffs up, he can do very well. Void, on the other hand, he relies on that signature ability. He needs sick to 100, and that's how he gets most of his damage. And as you can see, Mr. Fantastic won easily. I think this damage comparison, this specific video is sped up by 100%, I guess. I think the next one is also sped up, just because, they are kind of boring. I must say, I generally don't enjoy watching that many damage comparison videos, but some of them are interesting. Most of them I just skip to the end to see who won, and if I'm surprised, I will go back and watch and see, okay, why did they win, or how much more damage were they doing on, medium crits, light crits, whatever. So this situation, in this scenario, we are talking about synergies, and Mr. Fantastic obviously has his full Fantastic Four synergy, including She-Hulk, or I think something like that, or Sentry, for the power sting. For Void, I have Killmonger, Omega Red, and the Mr. Fantastic and the Sentry synergy for the power sting. And I'm gonna say this, Mr. Fantastic, I think, at least to me, after Magneto X, he is the best support champion in the game, because he can easily stand his own. And as you can see, Mr. Fantastic won that fight. It wasn't that big of a difference, but Mr. Fantastic did come out faster, like a couple of seconds faster, or 5 seconds faster. Okay, so here, Wolverine, who doesn't want to see his health bar melt? And I'm gonna tell you this, Mr. Fantastic was so fun for this fight. You're gonna see why as the fight goes on. You can already see, like, Wolverine is melting. He's halfway down, or almost halfway down, and Void barely got his petrifies up. He barely made a dent. And this is one thing that I don't really like about Void. He is very RNG reliant. He relies on getting those petrifies first, because if he doesn't get that, his power gain, his power control and regen control takes time to kick in. It's not bad, but it takes time to kick in. And you see, Wolverine is only at 80% HP, and Mr. Fantastic already finished that fight. This is, I think, real time. Yeah, this is real time. So I think Mr. Fantastic did this in a minute. I'm not sure. You can correct me on that. And Void is taking his time a little bit, and that's mostly because of RNG. I think I played a little bit bad here, but yeah, that's what it is. Okay, so now that that's done, we're gonna be going into Act 6.4. I think this is the Adaptoid quest. This Doctor Strange has Power Struggle, Prey on the Weak, and I think he has Aspect of Evolution. So we're gonna be seeing how these two do over here. I don't think, yeah, I'm not running any synergies here. I think I'm only running the Power Sting synergy, so that's for both of them. My team is Void, Mr. Fantastic, and Sentry, and the Sentry and Void synergy really only affects Void if you use the SP3, so this is just a Power Sting synergy. Alright, so for the power control, I must give it to Mr. Fantastic. You're so much in control of the power, not only because you have the petrifies up, they are a bit weaker petrifies, they're 40% compared to 50%, but not only because of the petrifies, but also because of the suppressions. They suppress the power gain by 25% on being hit. Of course, that doesn't matter here because Doctor Strange gains no power from being hit, and it's gonna matter in other situations. You'll see in a bit though. And both of them are doing well. I'm not gonna say that Mr. Fantastic is better here or Void is better here. They both are able to do the job. And in passive power gain scenarios like this, like Sorcerer Supreme, and if there is anybody else, I think Symbiote Supreme as well, they're pretty much the same. So like you saw there, you know, about the same. I'm not gonna say either one of them won, but here's the kicker. So this is the Hyperion from the Kingpin quest where there is destructive feedback, and I enjoyed this fight a lot. One more thing I'm gonna say, I think in all of these videos I didn't go back in to get the perfect run because I wanted to show how it looks like right off the bat. So unless I died, I didn't go back in, which is pretty obvious, which is the point of the video. But if I got bad RNG, I didn't care. I just pushed on as long as I didn't die. I might take a few hits, but the goal was to show the most realistic scenario of how these champions play out. Alright, so as you can see, power gain, both of them are doing well. But here's the thing about Mr. Fantastic. He can nullify or he can stagger buffs. And that specifically comes in handy versus Hyperion. You will see in a bit or towards the end I will throw an SP1 just to control his power. Just to control his power even more. I don't think I needed to do that, but because I pretty much had his power gain under control, I thought that why not just nullify his power gain. So you can see that, you know, both of them are pretty close. They're not too bad. And again, Mr. Fantastic won by just a little bit, and I won't say again that either one of them was better. But don't forget that Mr. Fantastic is unawakened. And that awaken ability does come in handy. It's not important, it's not very important, but it does come in handy. So here we are on the Buffet, Do Not Go Gentle, and Energized Path, and this is in the Infinity Man quest in 6.3, I think, if I'm correct. This is where Mr. Fantastic's suppression really shines. Now of course there is one more issue with Void, that you're gonna see that in a little bit. And the problem is that Void's dash back is very good, I guess. That's what I would think, which is a bad thing in this scenario because I wasn't able to get the decks off. I mean, you see that right now I'm able to get the decks easily, but then later on I will try to dex again, but it's not gonna work. It's not gonna proc the buff because I don't know, I think I dex too early. I think I dex at the same time, but there's also parry and dex issues, like you all know, you all been suffering from it. But you're gonna see that, and you can already see actually that Mr. Fantastic is doing much better. I know I'm kind of getting the bad RNG, or I'm not lucky, or I'm playing bad, whatever you may call it, with Void, so that's why it's looking like he isn't doing that well. But even if I was playing perfect, which I think I'm trying my best to play over here, just because you see over there his dex is not proccing, and then I get the Blexerity, like they call it. This fight is about 35 to 40, or Void's fight is about 35 to 40 seconds longer. I think if I didn't have those issues, it would have only been 15 to 20 seconds longer, which is still, you know, remarkable, because people don't really consider Mr. Fantastic being better than Void. And the suppression really came in clutch right over there, where I could control the power. So I will say that Mr. Fantastic won this one. And because all of us are watching Mr. Fantastic win a little bit, or a lot, pretty much everything before this, I'm gonna throw in Masochism. This is from 7.1, where there is Masochism, Power Focus, and some skill node. So Masochism is bugged for Mr. Fantastic. As you can see, I have one of my debuffs up, but the other two are gone. It should have been either all three of them or only one of them. And I don't know if this is a bug with Mr. Fantastic, or it's a bug with champions who have a lot of debuffs, or who proc a lot of debuffs at the same time. But I don't show that in this video, but I will let you know that when I was fighting King Groot, each time he would throw a special, he gets that special one debuff, that careful study debuff, and when that happens, King Groot will shrug off all other debuffs, but he's not only actually supposed to shrug off the new debuff. So I don't know if that somehow plays into this. I think it does, but you're gonna see Void doing much better here, and he's gonna win. Spoiler alert, he's gonna win this one. Like I said, Mr. Fantastic really relies on having all those debuffs up, and because of Masochism, you need to be a bit careful when you play him. You need to proc your SP2 debuffs when the cooldown, when the timer is on a cooldown. And his SP2 animation is a bit too long, so, you know, it gets tricky. Long story short, Void is much better for Masochism, partly because Mr. Fantastic is bugged, but mostly because his playstyle means that you need to be a bit more careful when you're throwing your SP2 and when you're refreshing those debuffs, because when you refresh the debuffs, if the timer is not on, which means if the Masochism node is active, you might just shrug off all the debuffs. So I think Mr. Fantastic took about 30 to 40 seconds longer in this fight, and Void is the clear winner. And I'm gonna show a similar scenario as well in the next fight in just a bit. Alright, so this one is from 7.1 as well. I think this is the path onto the Rhino boss. This one has Vivified, it has Power Alternator, yes, and it has this node where all Science champions enervate the opponent whenever they drop a special attack, and when the enervate timer expires, if there is an active debuff, it's going to consume that debuff and replace or refresh the enervate timer. So in this scenario, much like the previous fight with Masochism, Mr. Fantastic kind of struggles as well, because he needs at least 6 to 10 debuffs to get like really good to get going and get his damage up. So you're gonna see that Void is doing better here, just like that. I think what's that, 50% to 60%, and it's much easier to keep at least the inner weight up with Void, because you place your debuffs one at a time. And for Mr. Fantastic, because there is power alternator, it messes up with his rotation, which means that you cannot really rush to the SP2 that quick, especially if he's unduped. So over here, if he had his dupe, and if he was at least like Sig 60, Sig 100, he would increase his combat power rate while the careful passive study is up. Careful study passive, sorry. And that can go up to 50% at Sig 200, which means that he could rush to his SP2 much faster. And that would mean that he could at least close the gap. I don't know if he could completely close the gap in between Void's victory and his victory. I think it's also another 30 seconds that Mr. Fantastic takes here, but it would have been possible. So you will see over here that, and this is a recurring theme, this also extends to Power Snack, it also extends to Conflictor. So in Power Snack and Buffet scenarios, I think Mr. Fantastic would do better, but in Conflictor and in Masochism fights, I think Void will do better. And this is shaping up to be the video where you're gonna think, okay, I don't think Mr. Fantastic is bad, and I think he is better in some situations, and probably Void is better in other situations, which is pretty much the point. Well, not the point of the video, but that's pretty much the conclusion gonna be over here. Alright, this is a very interesting fight. I am very excited to show you this fight. This is 6.4.5 or 4.4 with the Cap Marvel movie boss, where there is Diss Track and Cold Snap, plus there is, I think, Soft Guard. So over here, Mr. Fantastic, as usual, he only has his Power Sting synergy. Does he? Yeah, he has the Power Sting synergy. But for Void, I decided to throw in Killmonger, and you will see why. So you can see that Void is ticking for 25, 24 a tick per Cold Snap debuff, and Mr. Fantastic has gone down to 9 now. Or is he gone down to? Okay, sorry, he's gone down to 17 per tick, and that's where the debuff siphoner, the debuff that reduces the potency of all damage over time debuffs, comes into play. And now is where the magic happens. So now we're reducing the potency of Cold Snap by 75%. And don't forget, if I get hit by his SP1, he can place a bleed on me, but I will reduce the potency of his bleed by 75%, plus I'm running 1 point in Coagulate. So that's going to reduce by 85%, which essentially makes him like a Magneto, like a what is that, Omega Red, which is so crazy if you think about it. Now, you're not going to use this everywhere. You're not going to be bringing Mr. Fantastic to a fight where you can reduce the potency of bleed like Biohazard or something. No, that's not going to happen. But that is something that comes into play in situations like these. And of course, if I didn't get hit, I would have been at 100% HP, but I don't know. So this track is a node where you need to have 3 debuffs up. It can be of the same type, it doesn't matter. And because Mr. Fantastic has 3 debuffs up pretty much for 100%, I won't even say 99%, I'm going to say 100% of the fight, unless you mess up, he is easily going to win. There's like no doubt that he's going to lose over here. But Void, he cycles through his intimidating debuffs, and he needs to, and he converts, like, or not converts, but he combines 6 of them into Fear of the Void. So he takes a while to actually do Diss Track. I'm not saying that they're really good Diss Track options, but there are champions who have a lot of debuffs, and if your account doesn't have that many debuff heavy champions, you might think about, oh wait, will Mr. Fantastic work or will Void work? Let me see. So this video is just to show that. It's not to show that they're good options for Diss Track. They might be. They might very well be. Alright, now let's start wrapping up the video. In this clip, this is just to see which one does worse. So I'm bringing them against Elsa. We all know skill champions shrug off debuffs. There are more champions that also shrug off debuffs, but skill champions are the ones that are probably the most the better known champions. I have sped up this this clip by 100%. I'm only gonna wait and see which one reaches the 50% mark faster. And Elsa shrugs off a debuff every 2.6 seconds or every 2.5 seconds. So I think this is in 7.2. This is Footloose. It has counter tactics and it has foresight. And you can see once again that Mr. Fantastic is winning this, and he won there. He already brought Elsa down to 50%, but Void is kind of struggling because he really needs that Fear of the Void on him or on the opponents to do his damage. So, you know, just in case you were wondering which one is worse. Alright, so what do I think about these two champions? Now, I have Void at rank 3 Sig 200 and a 565 Sig 200 and a 550 max Sig as well. I've been a big fan of Void. I think he's a really good champion, and I didn't even showcase the Incinerate immunity. I don't think there was anything to showcase because he will do better, obviously. But what do I think about these champions? So far we saw that in 8 out of those 10 scenarios or situations, Mr. Fantastic did better than Void. The difference wasn't huge. It wasn't like, oh my god, Mr. Fantastic is miles ahead of Void. No, it wasn't. Like, he was slightly better in most scenarios. In a couple of scenarios he was much better, but it wasn't like Void was a terrible option. He was still a good option. And then in another 2 scenarios, Void was much better and Mr. Fantastic was the lesser champion. And in those 2 scenarios, I think Mr. Fantastic was slightly bugged, but yeah, those were the results. It's 80-20. I do think that they're both really good champions. I do think that Mr. Fantastic is really underrated, and you can, in 99% of the situations, you can pretty much use either one of them and they're gonna get the job done. And this, again, keep in mind, this again is while Mr. Fantastic is unduped. So that does make a decent amount of difference. And not to mention, Mr. Fantastic is one of the best support champions in game. He has that amazing power sync synergy, and for cosmic champions he also has that buff pause synergy. So all in all, I do think that they're very good. I do think Mr. Fantastic is quite a bit underrated. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments what do you think about it, and I'll see you again.